Hello everyone and welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 84. I'm your host, The Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
I'm good, Don. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Today, we're going to be talking about a lot of news that's kind of happened, especially with Disney Plus coming out, some Star Wars news, some Marvel news, and all this type of stuff. But obviously, before we dive into anything, please like, share, and subscribe our content. It helps us a lot. Making this podcast grow and things like that. So I think the first thing on our agenda is Pokemon Sun. No, it's not Sun. That's the other one. It's Shield and Sword. Recently just came out. And that's the thing. This game has had quite a bit of controversy. Even though, yeah, and I think there's been a lot of positive things with this game because it's a fully, I'd say, the 3D kind of adventure that everyone kind of been wanting for Pokemon for a very long time. It's on a mainstream, bigger console, which is on the Switch, which I guess is cannibalizing the 3DS. But yeah, this game has had quite a bit of controversy, hasn't it?
Yeah, to say the least, especially if you've been following, all the I guess controversy that's been happening on the official Pokemon Reddit. Yeah, people have been kind of losing their minds, and there's been a lot of data mining because I think a lot of the game uh initially got released, through hackers in the Switch community. And a lot of data mining kind of revealed, and this was the big one that kind of got revealed, that the new game has been reusing old character models for the Pokemon. And there's been a lot of comparisons. I believe it's from Black and White 2. So it's a couple of generations ago,
Mm.
where they were comparing the mesh and the skeletons. Again, I'm not a video game programmer, so I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct term. But if you go on Twitter and you type in Game Freak Lied, you can see your hashtag Game Freak Lied. You can see a lot of people comparing the mesh models of Charizard from the old games, Pikachu, Bulbasaur, having similar polygon counts and stuff like that. And
How,
this
how,
was
how much,
yeah.
like, I just want to dive to this a little bit. How much of this is that big of that big of a deal? Because, like, you see games like, I don't know, like the FIFA games and all these types of games. They really literally release a new NBA. They release a new game every single year, and there's barely any change.
Mhm,
And then when Pokemon does it, I guess it gets a lot of hate. I think it's because the
mhm.
Pokemon community I guess it's different from, I guess the different
Well,
one,
I
right?
think I think well, one, I think people who play the FIFA games uh, are far more easier to monetize because of the kind of advent of things like, I think, the fantasy game, the fantasy soccer game, where you get like new cards and stuff like that, and they kind of justify the painter coat, the new paint, on the game by saying, oh well, we need to put in new players, and oh, we need to add a new team and a new stadium here and there, but ultimately the game itself is mostly the same. It's just like ultimately how you kind of present the game is what's important. And if you say like, oh well, it's all the same, but we are bringing back all the teams, right? It's not like you're going to buy FIFA, I guess 20, and it's going to be, oh well, we're going to cut out, Manchester United because we're switching it up this year.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing is that and in particular, Polygon released an article back in July of this year, basically saying, quote, no, Pokemon Sword and Shield is not reusing models from the recent Pokemon game. And it essentially it talks about an interview with Famitsu, that the creators of Pokemon, Game Freak, said that they were making Pokemon Sword and Shield from the ground up, and so they weren't reusing um, old assets, and they were essentially cutting Pokemon in order to, and the justification for cutting out the Pokemon was, oh, we're going to be putting our time and energy into making new animations and making the game look better and look, the graphical fidelity being better.
Right.
But that's obviously a big ass lie.
Gotcha. So that's what I know, because
Right.
I knew the controversy when they cut a bunch of Pokemon, and I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, fair enough. They've got like what 800 and something, 900 something ridiculous,
Oh
Pokemon.
yeah, it's only escalating. I'm pretty sure there's over a K like Pokemon, but now it's been cut down to, I believe, I want to say about 400 or something. Which, to be fair, like that's a lot of Pokemon to catch, but especially when the creators of the games say, oh no, we're not using old assets. Oh, we're just creating everything from the ground up. That's the reason why you can't have your favorite Pokemon. Everybody hates Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard now because they're the only uh, Pokemon
OG
starter
ones.
Pokemon.
It's always the fire, isn't it? It's always I hate fire. I was always a water type
Well,
person.
well, yeah, you're one of those people who has bad opinions, but that's okay. We love you
Don't
anyways.
worry. Bulbasaur was the worst opinion. Everyone knows that.
That's true. Everybody, it's kind of like the, black hand, white hand meme, It's like hating Bulbasaur, even though, um, from the statistics of Pokemon itself, Bulbasaur is technically the strongest starter.
Yeah, because you can
And I think,
eliminate the first like I think 3 to 4 gyms with like ease.
but even from like a stat perspective and how, like, certain Pokemon have X in like special attack and Y in speed and stuff like that. Technically, Bulbasaur has like the best stats out of like the starter Pokemons and stuff. So even though, and like you said, it has like a type advantage. Even though I never had a problem with Brock playing the original game, it's like I ended up getting a Charmeleon by the time I reached Brock, so I never had a problem. You just fucking give it the old scratch, and
Mm-hmm.
those Geodudes go down. But yeah, like so essentially, like, given that Game Freak has said, hey, look, this is the reason why we're cutting out uh, all these Pokemon is because we're going to improve how the game looks. But this isn't what we've been seeing, at least from initial fans' reactions to the games. And not only have they essentially cut out a ton of Pokemon, which, by the way, again, kind of doesn't make sense if you're reusing asset. If you're reusing the asset and let the game, maybe take some time to put the game Pokemon in, because essentially, I don't know if you've heard of Pokemon Home. Have you heard of Pokemon Home?
Isn't that the I think it's like what the phone app thing or whatever it is that transfers Pokemon to other devices and things like that?
Well, yeah, essentially it's supposed to be like an online database where you can transfer Pokemon from the previous generations, all on one device, and allow you to play them on different devices. To the point that, if you've kept your old Pokemon Red and you've been kind of keeping that Charmander from that first game and playing or using it, since, because you could trade it into Ruby. I think Ruby and stuff was like was the first game. I don't know. Did you ever have an SP, a Game Boy SP?
Yeah. Of course. I pretty
Yeah,
much was a big Pokemon fan up until like that third generation, which it was like Ruby,
right.
Sapphire, and Emerald, and that's when I kind of lost track almost.
Yeah, so like I think the big draw, at the time was that you could kind of play, um, I believe, could you play both games on a Game Boy SP? Man, now I have to do the fact check, man, because I
Yeah.
remember.
What do you mean? Like they were both Game Boy SP games. I mean
Yeah, yeah,
Game Boy
yeah.
games,
Sorry.
Game Boy
Yeah, yeah.
Advance games.
Game Boy Advance games. Yeah, right. So because you could kind of still transfer stuff, like, people were technically still able to transfer, older Pokemon very easily over. And it was kind of like that generation crossover before everything started to get like really technical. But yeah, anyways, the point is, people aren't liking the cut of these Pokemon. But then on top of that, they're also cutting out moves. So I think they have said, according to all the data mining and stuff, that 144 moves were removed. And the thing is, they said, oh, the reason why these moves were, we've removed certain moves was because to make it more simpler for like competitive Pokemon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is a big thing. I was made aware of it quite humbly because when I went to PAX, there's a huge tournament that happens there, and yeah, people get really into it, and yeah, and essentially, but the weird thing is, they didn't get rid of a lot of quote unquote problem moves, like moves that get used because of how cheesy they are, or strategic, like strategic advantages they have. There's one I know that's called Stealth Rock, and essentially it's just a move that you do, and it damages uh, Pokemon when they come into the battlefield. So automatically, any new Pokemon that comes in, boom, you're gonna get hit. Particular attack.
I've heard ones where it's you poison an enemy, and they also
Mm-hmm.
and the other one's kind of floating, and then you
Mm-hmm.
do float. So then kind of you let the poison kind of do its magic, and then you just kind of sit back.
Ah, right. Yeah, you see, and the thing is, these kind of moves. The weird thing is they removed a lot of signature moves for certain Pokemon. So, some starter Pokemon in particular that come to mind, like some starter Pokemon have like starter specific moves that no other Pokemon would be able to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've removed some signature moves, but they've still kept the Pokemon that would be able to use those moves, but they're unable to use that move because that move doesn't exist. Um, and the thing is, if you're moving a Pokemon that has a move but is legal in the game, they just won't have that move. And it'll come in as, oh, it has forgotten that move. So that's also another thing to keep in mind. Would be really annoying. People have been saying that the game's short. About 16 to 20 hours is like the average that a lot of streamers have been finishing it at. Uh, it doesn't look graphically better than the previous Pokemon games, which is the big thing because I think a lot of people wanted that. As you were mentioning, that 3D Pokemon game, but it doesn't even look that much better than the old GameCube game that came out. That comes to mind that I
Yeah.
really like.
So either
Um,
way, like I've heard some relatively good things, even just like the reviews coming out. I think a lot of people are saying this game is positive and people do like it.
mhm.
I think there's just there is a lot of stuff where I guess the development side of things they kind of cut back. Um,
Well, they cut corners. Like this is the thing. Like there's still issues in the game with texture popping. People like riding on bicycles, and then all of a sudden trees and Pokemon suddenly pop in. The world stopping when you're climbing ladders. That was something that I saw that I thought was really funny. Like a lot of the overworld characters, like some of the trainers, like will be like walking around or like throwing a Pokeball in the air. But the moment you start climbing the ladder, you'll see like the person has frozen and the Pokeball's in the air until you kind of get off the ladder. It's just really bizarre, like some of the choices that they've decided to go with, especially for a game that one of Nintendo's biggest games, right? And most successful games. It makes like I don't know. I want to say like millions, like hundreds of
yeah,
millions.
it's a big
You know?
franchise. Like Pokemon is still like it's insane how much people like love it. It's not just the hardcore, but it's like even just the I guess
Yeah.
the normal people. Like Pokemon's huge, really.
Look. I haven't played. I started playing X and Y, but I never finished it. So I want to say that like the last game that I literally played would have been Black and White because I never played Black and White 2 because I was just like, no, I don't want to deal with that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's kind of ridiculous that it's kind of come to this point where they're just kind of, and I've heard online before that a lot of fans have been seeing the kind of laziness from Game Freak, and maybe it might be just as a result of fatigue, like developer fatigue. Maybe they're getting over having to make Pokemon games every year or sorry, every couple of years, and stuff like that. But I think at that stage, maybe you want to make the team bigger and hire more people.
Or yeah, or
Maybe
maybe
have a Pokemon specific team.
yeah, you do something different because for example, with what Microsoft is doing, they have separate studios to do like literally like Gears of War and Halo
Mm.
games. But yeah, and that's like these people are the people who want to make these games, and it's not like, oh, we want to do something else differently. And like if they do want to do
Mhm.
something differently, they can do kind of like a different studio. So it's kind of like that almost, where it's like
Yeah,
they
I mean,
do their own
I mean,
thing.
look, more problems with this game. Apparently, you can't skip cutscenes. They force you to watch it. There's apparently not much post game stuff to do. There's a problem with like a lot of the behaviors. The Z moves and stuff like have been gotten rid of, which was like a concept that was introduced in the previous game. There's no global trading anymore, which kind of makes sense because if you're restricting the Pokemon that you can get, then you won't be able, you can't receive X or Y Pokemon. But why not just make a global trading specifically for Sword and Shield? You
Mm.
know,
Yeah,
it,
I get what you mean.
it seems like I don't know. It just doesn't seem to make sense, like the way that they've been going with this game. On top of that, there was also reports of like save breaking, but apparently that's only for the eShop version of the game. So I'm not really too sure what the ongoing news for that is, and it might just be something like a one-off thing, but I hope not, because essentially this particular bug, if you get it for your game, it results in all your Switch save data being erased from your memory card, so an external memory card.
So either
So
way,
yeah.
it seems like it's a kind of a bad launch almost. But
Oh yeah. I mean, it's gonna sell millions, but I think it's gonna leave a bad taste in the hardcore fans' mouths, and they're kind of the driving factor for Pokemon, like mainstream. Like people are gonna play the games because of nostalgia, obviously, right? It's part of the reason why Pokemon Go is still popular because it banked heavily on the nostalgia factor, and now people are obviously who are the hardcore players are keeping at it and are still playing it. So personally, I might pick up this game, maybe when it's cheaper and once I've finished at least X, Y, and what is it, Ultra Sun and Moon. I need to play those games and Omega Sapphire and Ruby.
they're all
I,
they're all RPGs. Just instead of having like 3 or 4 party members, it's like literally like 600.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, I love the Pokemon game, so it's sad to see that, it's kind of going down this direction, but, hopefully, they'll change up or there's like a shake up at Nintendo to kind of be like, hey, how about we actually like, fix the issues that is happening at Game Freak? Or, if there is some internal problems, like if the frustrations is like, oh, like, we're cutting corners because we're getting sick of making Pokemon games, then hopefully that gets addressed. But if this is just like, oh, we're lazy and like, Pokemon fans are gonna buy this regardless, like, that's what I hope isn't the case. But you know,
Yeah, you never know with
it's
that
been,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I guess we'll move on to the next set of news, the more positive set of
More
news.
upbeat, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So recently, it was announced that apparently Netflix got the rights of Beverly Hills Cops from Paramount, and they're going to be making a sequel to the movie with Eddie Murphy and Jerry Bruckheimer. So that sounds dope.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Because I love the Beverly Hills Cop movies. I watched them when I was
mhm.
actually a kid. Um,
Oh, did ya?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. My parents just let me watch it, and like really that was kind of like my first knowledge of Eddie Murphy. And I just really like the character. I do remember like the third movie that they had like some weird gun that could shoot nets and has a flamethrower. I remember that as like a joke, and it's like
hmm
yeah, because like I think the original uh, director and writer is the I forgot his name. It's not Max Landis, which is his son. It's the other Landis. And he started Beverly Hills Cop. And that was kind of his thing, and I really enjoyed it. And I think there was actually news, I think 3 years ago, that they were going to reboot Beverly Hills Cop, and it was going to be like a TV movie, and I think they shot it, or like it was some sort of pilot, and yeah, it didn't get picked up or whatever it may be. So it's like one of those like
with Eddie Murphy.
I think it was with Eddie Murphy, or it was like over it was him, and it was passing it on, and clearly that didn't work. So yeah, they must have just sold the rights. But either way, I would be really happy to see Beverly Hills Cop kind of return, because it's like, it has that kind of cop drama of investigation and trying to find out who's the bad guy, but it does have some funny elements. Like I think in the first movie, there's the FBI don't trust him. So they tail him. So then he puts a banana in the tailpipe, something like that. Like, stuff like that. It's like just fun times. Like it reminds me of Rush Hour, or like Lethal Weapon, where it has its serious elements, but it does have fun moments. And I kind of want something like this, more of it, I guess.
Yeah, it's strange. It's one of those things where like buddy cop films, or just like dramas related to like a small sized like story is usually relegated to TV now, because that's how good TV has gotten. Like certain movies or would just be like a 10 episode like arc now, rather than a 2 hour action pack movie. But those were the times back then, because I couldn't imagine even like Western like films, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and stuff. Like, would that have been made a film nowadays? Probably not, right?
Yeah, it's different now, and I think it's just different taste, and like also like it costs them a lot of money to get that stuff going. So
exactly, and you see, and now it's all about having a fixed user base to funnel your future endeavors off. And this is kind of continuing on to other news, which is that Netflix and Nickelodeon are teaming up together to produce original animated films and series for kids and families. So, they've already released, I think, Rocko's Modern Life. Like, there was like another season for that, and also Invader Zim, which was like a kind of cult film, cartoon that a lot of people loved from Cartoon Network. I never watched it myself, but
pretty much Invader Zim was very much hitting on, I guess, that emo type culture, and it was actually written by a guy who was pretty much in that. It was kind of making fun of it, that's the whole thing. It's like they actually adopted the thing that it was making fun of.
Exactly.
And so either way, this is like a big play for them, because like for kids programming, like I kind of thought, in a sense, like Netflix has kind of two options, because obviously Disney took away all their stuff, which this is pretty much a direct move of competing with Disney Plus. Is partner up with Nickelodeon or like DreamWorks or whatever it is to kind of release that type of stuff.
Cartoon Network or whatever it may be.
But on top of that, there's what I was gonna say is that and what they kind of do, and maybe they'll still kind of do, is they do release some anime stuff, and they do have partnerships with that, but that's a little bit more maybe like adult focused as well. Some anime, so definitely they're kind of they're definitely targeting a younger audience with the Netflix deal, and that that's good. It's just reviving old stuff, and maybe obviously some new stuff. Because I don't see really Nickelodeon do much difference or anything new as far as I know. Or they are, but it's maybe not the same caliber as, like, I don't know, the Angry Beavers or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's true. Although that's a really good point. I don't know what Nickelodeon is doing. I know, like, growing up, like, there was a ton of shows that they produced. One that comes to mind for me is Rugrats. And then later on they made like Rugrats, but they're teenagers. Oh man,
it was like Rugrats grown up or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm like, oh man, what the fuck is this? But like, but obviously, they had like the balls to kind of make these kind of bizarre shows for people to watch. So if that means more content for the people, I'm all for it. That's always good to hear.
Yeah, there's content everywhere, guys. Making new stuff, but as well as going back to old stuff, and like speaking of old stuff, there was like a kind of recent news that they were gonna do also a Friends reunion for HBO Max. So they're gonna bring back the show. They'll do one of those things where, like, I don't know, I think Will and Grace did it, and a few other shows have done it now, where they just kind of the old cast come back and kind of show them a little bit later, and just kind of continuation, and like and I think the original conceit of most of this stuff is that it's going to be kind of a one and done, but most of the time you never know, it could just come back and start a new series if it's really good. And I know that Friends has its kind of a loyal fan base to it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, none of you haven't really seen a lot of these actors outside of Jennifer Aniston. You do see like David Schwimmer like here and there. And I think Courtney Cox does things, but
She
I don't see
does
much.
things.
Like I don't hear anything from anyone else from this kind of cast of people, and part of that is because they kind of get to live off the royalties of the Friends show itself, right? And now that HBO Max has exclusive streaming rights for Friends, it makes perfect sense that they want to try and get everyone together and try and make more money. Get people on the platform to watch this stuff. Again, and the thing is, I think the original showrunners, I think David Crane, they're
I don't
coming
know,
back
man.
as
I'm
well.
not a
Yeah,
Friends person.
yeah. I mean, look, I need to sit down and watch all of it and watch the ride from the beginning, but it's so long, and I'm so very behind. But again, it's this thing that we're seeing where a lot of kind of surefire content is getting like a sequel or another season or a reunion because it's easy money to print because
It's
people are going to
basically, yeah,
watch it.
you got the already, as you mentioned before, you got the automatic install base already
Mm,
there, so you already have the interest. So like ratings and stuff like that won't really be a problem. It's just
mm,
really the quality and seeing what they're gonna do with the characters.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, on to probably more good news of things that are getting more seasons. Titans has been confirmed to get season 3, which is really cool. I don't think there was really much doubt about it, but I think the only show from the DC, universe application was the Doom Patrol show. Other than
Yes.
that, nothing else was really confirmed to be coming. And I think that with Titans being renewed for season 3, that kind of guarantees okay, probably all going to be on HBO Max. Um,
Which,
because
yeah,
I think
the deal's turning like more and more really really well with that type of stuff. It's like, oh crap, man, they've got a lot of stuff.
dude, I don't know if HBO Max is coming to Australia, but like, it's gonna be really awesome if it does. Because I know Disney Plus is, but I wonder what the syndication rights is gonna be like
Yeah,
here.
there's gonna be a split between some of this stuff. I
Yeah,
think
we'll have
that's
to
the main
see.
problem. Yeah.
Because I don't know, because I know definitely Disney probably has their like all their rights for everything in America, but over here maybe not so much. We'll just have to see when the time comes. But another show that is also getting a season 3 renewal is The Witcher.
Hmm.
Even though The Witcher isn't out yet, very confusing.
Well, yeah,
It must be.
I think what it basically is that they've shown confidence that the show is
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
do
I
well.
get
But
it, but
but you never know, because I think certain things do get renewed that might not even be good as well. Like especially
yeah,
pre-head. And I think because like there was recent news last week that said the showrunners of the show of the Witcher show have a plan for it to last 7 seasons. So maybe
yikes.
ahead of that news, they're just like, okay, we'll give you a season 2. So even if season 1 might be bad, we're gonna at least try to push it on and see what we can do with the characters and things like that. I think that's their plan.
Well, I mean, look, they said the same thing about what is it, BoJack Horseman, and then it got cancelled. To be honest, I think it's kind of a good thing. BoJack Horseman was doing too much of a, oh yeah, I'm an asshole and I don't change. just nothing but hijinks. But I we'll have to wait and see whether or not The Witcher is any good. But yeah, onto like bigger news. I think this is the main news that I care about the most.
Bigger news, yeah.
'Cause-
You can say
yeah,
that
because
because it's a big number.
well, it's a huge number because Joker, as of today, will be surpassing the 1 billion mark worldwide, and it's the first R-rated movie to do so as well. So that's really big.
It is big.
Without China,
Yeah, without China, I think that's a big thing these days.
Jesus, but it's an R-rated. Well, look, it makes sense because you're not going to get like a R-rated Joker playing in China. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a little bit of editing here and there. They could probably make a quote-unquote China-friendly version of the Joker.
But it wouldn't be the same, man.
Yeah, but then you get the China bucks.
Yeah, but either way, they didn't even need them. That's the whole thing of the story. They didn't even need China to get to this point. And not only that, but it doesn't have the, I guess, normal superhero antics. It's literally just a character study, very grounded. And it just made this much money. It just shows that, like, sure, like in the genre you have, capes and people doing special powers. It just shows that you don't really need that. To so long as you have a good story, you can definitely deliver on something really special.
I mean, it just shows word of mouth for this film was so good that people went and watched this so much. Like, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. Especially, and look, the other thing is, I think the other big thing is, it's like the most profitable superhero film as well, since the movie was made with like 60 million. So compared to like if you look at like any of the Marvel films, like it's usually
it's
in
at least
hundreds.
$150 million onwards, basically.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, like WB also spent half that amount because they split the cost with a third party. So they, in particular, also invested less and got so much out of it. I think it's excellent. Joker deserves it. Hopefully, it doesn't prevent it from, because now it's gotten so big. Now it's like too good to win an Oscar. Sorry, not too good. Like kind of too mainstream to win an Oscar.
I don't think so. Like, I think the thing is like
name a superhero film.
Not
other than
superhero.
Black
Well, a big
Panther.
budget one that at least got nominated is Avatar. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
so
mean,
that's
sure.
that's how I see what happened. But I think it's also because I think there has been a lot of, I guess, with the normal Hollywood type of people who do reviews, that I think there are who just don't like this film. I think it's one of those things where I feel like with this, I feel like with not only that, but with this film, it's cool to hate this film now. Like it's because it's gained so much popularity that everyone's like, I hate this movie now. Like, a lot of people do like it, but then there's obviously going to be the person who's like, nah, man, this is kind of whatever. And I think it's like now it's basically cool to hate the film. I think that's what's going to happen
I
with
haven't heard too much
a
hate.
lot of circles. I
People
think.
were hating this film before it even came out, right? Like you had all the kind of mainstream journalism sites like coming out and being like, "Oh, this is gonna incite like violence. Can somebody please shoot up the movie so my article makes sense?" Like this is the kind of shit that I kind of expect from people who are nickel and diming their websites to try and make money, right? But I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, there's going to be, the contrarian advice, especially from people who are also exaggerating this to be like, oh, this is society in a nutshell,
Yeah.
and obviously, that isn't the case, but it's a hyper realistic version of the world that we're supposed to quote unquote be living in.
Either way,
I
I
think the
say
thing is,
congrats because this really is a landmark of
it is.
you
It
know
is. I mean, this is the thing. I can see this, like, this obviously should win Oscars, but now I think, they're obviously at this stage where, they're like, oh, well, maybe we need to get some nominations first, and then we'll see whether we can win. Because, I don't know, I'm pretty, me, I'm kind of very apprehensive in regards to whether or not the Hollywood community and people who vote in quote unquote good movies will give this the recognition that Joker deserves. But there's also doubts about it making $1 billion. So positivity today. I guess that's going to be our motto: positivity. Since I was so negative
Positivity
at the
is all the
beginning.
good stuff. Yes.
Onto more positive news. Um, Dwayne the Rock Johnson recently announced that I think it was on his Instagram that Black Adam is going to be releasing in 2021. Yeah, so that movie finally has a release date.
Which is so weird because like it's like we've been talking about it for like what 3 to 4 years now, and it's
Mm.
like even before Shazam was kind of announced and that kind of came out earlier this year, and
Mm-hmm.
it's still
Came and went.
DC hasn't officially said anything as of yet because they don't do the Marvel formula I guess of
Like a
like telling
roadmap.
everyone like, hey, this is all the movies. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know anything since like the new Batman movie that's coming out and Wonder Woman, and this one's
Mm-hmm.
kind of obviously coming out, but there's nothing really since then.
Yeah, I mean, all we really have is concept art of what Dwayne the Rock Johnson might look like. And yeah, it looks cool. Maybe if they are really doing it with its connection to the Justice Society and Hawkman, Hawkgirl, like, might be a cool way to kind of do it. That's like kind of the rumors of how they're going to do everything. I'll be interested. It'd be interesting to see and see whether they are actually connecting it with the Shazam movie as well. Not necessarily having Billy Batson and the gang in it, but just being like, oh, hey, look, it's the Withered Shazam. He's here. It'll be cool to see how that all comes to pass going forward. And that's the thing, like you said, like DC doesn't do the whole roadmap thing. We don't know what is going to be the future of, uh, you know, DC film. I mean,
Well, that's the
recently,
thing. I think Joker is like a big wrench in the whole thing, where it's like something that isn't connected to anything, and is very grounded. It doesn't have the superhero antics. Has made so much more money, than our previous films, like Batman v
mm,
Superman. I think only
almost,
made in total like 600K, maybe in 300. I don't know. I wasn't quite sure, but it didn't. It made a small amount in
yeah.
comparison.
I mean, it's almost like making good films makes a lot of money when it's done correctly. Look, Justice League, not that great of a film. And unfortunately, it's because they kind of rushed everything. It has had to force them to kind of go back and be like, oh, how are we going to do everything? Wonder Woman's going to be the next big test of whether or not they still have some kind of vision in their DC cinematic universe. And then, Aquaman 2 is coming out. You got the new Batman movie, which, recently Andy Serkis has been reported to play Alfred as well. So, it's a whole thing, and it's kind of all over the place how, whether or not, Rob Patterson's going to do a good job. So look, we love DC here.
I think
If you
that's a
haven't
given.
noticed,
Yep.
yeah, if you haven't noticed, or if you haven't been listening to the podcast, yeah, we're pretty biased. But I want positive things. We're rooting for the underdogs, right? That's kind of how it is. So I look forward to seeing what DC can do. I just hope they don't drop the ball um, with everything.
Yeah, it
Uh,
depends on the heads of studios and see what they're doing, because there's even just news that like they might release the Snyder Cut of Justice League on their streaming service, because it could be something very different. But you never know. Maybe they'll never touch that stuff ever again and just never talk about it. Like for example, I really want to see the original cut of Suicide Squad and see the original ending that was a little bit more grounded. I think that would be more interesting.
it is definitely a really interesting way to kind of go about doing it. It's like, hey, like, you want to see a different version of Justice League? Come to our video service. We have this version. It's a good way to do it. Like, like, oh, like, let's say you watched you know how they're doing the whole thing with like Marvel What If or something, right? Like, what if they kind of did something? What if? I'm literally saying it in the sentence, but maybe they filmed like several different endings, and they're showing everyone like, hey, like, this is an example of like what we came up with, but ultimately we decided this ending is the better one because of what we're going to be doing, with the whole Marvel roadmap thing. Maybe they might not do that just because it might, quote unquote, confuse people, but, we'll have to see going forward what they do with it.
Mm.
Also, the latest trailer for the Harlequin animated series came out. It's kind of showing a little bit more of what the show or the will be about. Essentially, it kind of reminds me that this show is coming out at the same time as this new Birds of Prey movie,
Yeah,
and it's essentially the same plot, right? It's Harlequin kind of moving away from the Joker, but I think this show is going to be way better than
yeah.
that's the
This obviously, since it's in cartoon form, it's gonna still have its kind of cartoony roots and make it a little bit more like,
it's
it's
more
hard.
liberal with what it
It's
can
hard
do.
to adapt like weird cartoony like stuff into live action. That's why, something like a movie like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Roger Rabbit's still a cartoon, but even sometimes when the humans act like cartoons, it's like it has to have like a different tone and good acting to kind of get to that point. But yeah, like this animated show just looks like crazy hijinks that is like ultra violent, but like very much for an adult focus. I'm not quite sure how many episodes, but it looks at least
Yeah,
interesting for me to watch.
I was actually kind of surprised about how, like, quote unquote violent the actual show is, because I think, like, if you're watching this with someone who's like under I don't know, whatever, 12 or something,
12.
I don't know, I'm just throwing the number. I guess 7. Let's go with 7, right? You just think it's Batman. It's just Batman, but it's like Harley Quinn. But then, like, there's a shot of characters having their heads like slammed in or shot, and it's all bloody and gory. So yeah, I mean, watch out for it. But it's super cool. I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of more animation, Rick and Morty recently got released for season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you've seen it obviously. What did you think?
I think a good return episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of, I think there was it's kind of a joke where it's like it's basically live die repeat this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, the what is it, the Tom Cruise film? Because
Oh, yep, yep.
essentially, yeah, what
I'm
happens
pretty
is
sure.
like, yeah, because Rick, he gets a bunch of crystals that kind of like you can see your death or like
Mm-hmm.
see your life between your eyes. Yeah, that's a really cool concept, and they kind of played with it of like not only like Rick, since he dies and he has this program to come back into different dimensions, and that's a cool thing to kind of put into the
Mm-hmm.
universe and a cool situation, but as well as I guess Morty trying to get for the girl it's not Summer,
Yeah,
that's
what's her name? Yeah,
yeah
so no, Summer. That was his
yeah,
sister, right? Yeah.
but like essentially be like and then trying to get to the right decisions to lead to him being
Mm-hmm.
loved by her. I felt like it was a really good episode, and yeah, I just really enjoyed
I think
it.
the main thing, and the show kind of made a reference to it last season, but they did it again this season. They just kind of outrightly said, "Hey, yeah, this is good. We're going to go back to doing, these kind of short one-off episodes that don't require like an overarching plot and all that kind of stuff." They said at the end of last season, because I think it kind of had plot creep. And
And
then
it was because of the situation of yeah, Jerry and Jerry getting divorced, and I think like yeah, that obviously
well, and
it
also all the stuff that was happening with Rick.
yeah, well that as well, but the whole thing is like it changed, yeah, the dynamic of the show, and
Dynamic.
it was
Yeah.
very different. It's kind of like what happened with South Park, but
I think I
we
think
think
wasn't
South Park
it
it was for the best, but yeah.
I think like the showrunner like was going through a divorce. Like literally going through a divorce. So it was like reflected in the actual show itself. So I mean, yeah, it was weird. It wasn't bad, but I think like, obviously like you said, the tone of it was strange. And this is like a really strong beginning for the new season. It's really funny because apparently due to fan complaints, the UK season premiere was moved from January of next year to November 20 this year. Can you believe it? Like they actually, I don't know. It always blows my mind. Like I get it that syndication, planning, all that kind of stuff. That they have to kind of plan that in tandem with the release of a TV show. Uh, but I think global releases is something that needs to be done.
Well, you see it more
For a
and more
show to
with
be
the anime
successful.
community. Where they've got day in with not only of just getting the episode, but as well as getting at some cases the dub, the
Yeah,
simulcast,
simulcasting.
and I feel like
Yeah.
that is very important. And
Yeah,
especially for
I
people
didn't
who
even
don't
know
like the
what
subs.
I didn't even know what simulcasting was until like relatively recently. Because I was using I forget what the anime application that I was using, but I was using it and I was like, oh, what's simulcasting? And then I was like, oh, okay, that's a thing. Okay, cool. Like, I mean, I watch everything um, in Japanese, but with subs, right?
Mm.
But obviously, like you said, for people who want to watch it in dubs, like that's awesome that they don't have to wait in order to get everything. It's all kind of prepared, and it's all even if it's released episodically, it's all kind of done and released in a succinct way alongside with the sub version of it, and I think that's excellent. But with something like this, 3 months that people have to wait. And look, even like there was a comment that I read out to you earlier before the show, and I think that surmises exactly the big problem with it. It says everybody in the UK pirated it in 10 minutes after the end premiere in the US. Just distribution fuckery accomplishes literally nothing except wrecking your viewership numbers. So yeah, I think that kind of succinctly says exactly the big problem with not having these global releases. Yeah, people just pirate it and then release it, and then you're not going to have those huge premiere numbers, and people are going to think, oh, hey, is Rick and Morty dead? You know,
Which it's
I
clearly
think
not, because like I
no,
feel like
clearly
this
not.
was still kind of like stealth released. Like I think there was like not less like less fanfare. I feel like, but I don't know. It just could have just been like my friends. Like
Hmm. I
where did
mean,
this come from?
I think people maybe it wasn't like super duper promoted, uh, but I mean, I think like obviously once the ball gets rolling, people are going to be
They'd
all
be like,
over
wait a
it,
second, the
especially
new Rick and Morty's out.
yeah, exactly, right. Another thing I wanted to point out just really quickly in terms of animation, the new Scooby-Doo movie kind of got released and it's like 3D, which looks really cool.
Yeah,
Um, I,
it's probably the best option, because I do know that there was a lot of 2D animated direct to DVD movies that quite a bit of people do like.
mhm.
And yeah, like the live action films are kind of like, yeah, they're okay. I think they're actually written by James Gunn, so he's doing Guardians of the Galaxy now. So that
Oh
was
man,
before he was kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
big with his
Man,
thing.
I remember the old live action films. Those are great.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
like in a dumb way, they were great. I enjoyed them, but
But
I
yeah,
am
but
very
like
aware
yeah,
of how cheesy they were.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's because it's hard to as mentioned before,
Freddie
translate kind of
Prinze
cartoony
Jr.
stuff. You know?
Ah, man, so crazy. Also, they had the SpongeBob movie as well. So yeah, there's a lot of these like new like animated films that are coming up. But the big film that has now shot up to my number one to watch in terms of animated films is a new Sonic movie. Because they released a new trailer and they changed how Sonic looked. And he looks great.
And he doesn't look like Nightmare Fuel like everyone says.
Exactly. He doesn't have a weird snout.
He
He
doesn't
just
have the
has a
weird snout. Doesn't have like top teeth, and
teeth.
like eyes
He
are
has
not beady
gloves.
and weird looking. Like it looks more like
Yeah.
the the what is it, the games and stuff, which is like exactly what you
Hmm.
would want. I don't
You know what?
understand the push for like having everything ultra textured, very realistic. Um,
There there was
it works
the
well cartoony.
there was the claim that this was a I don't believe it, but I'd laugh if it was the case that this was done on purpose as a viral campaign for for the movie. That they purposely released this stupid version of Sonic because they thought, hey, you know what? This is going to be a great marketing tool. I obviously think that's bullshit because they obviously had to push the release date for a movie, which is obviously very expensive to delay because there's obviously contractual agreements and stuff the studios have to do. But there is a part of me that kind of wishes it's true that they they did this as a marketing play, like some genius thought, oh, that's a great way to promote the film. We'll release this disgusting, degenerate, nightmare fuel version of Sonic to get everybody's attention, because now the internet loves this new Sonic.
Yeah, not only did everyone love it, but everyone's like, we should actually see it because the studio did what the fans said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you know, I wish Lucasfilm did the
I
same
want to
thing,
watch.
but you know,
I want to watch this film now.
yeah, I'm definitely
they
gonna support it. Before I'm like, yeah, it's probably gonna be trash, whatever. But now I'm like, I don't care if it's trash. I'm watching it because we've made you to do something. You know, people
Well,
say like, I can't believe you bullied a studio to do what you want to do. You cyberbullied a
well, yeah,
studio.
that's the thing. I think the thing is like, I think they changed like the animations. They changed like now Sonic shows more like emotion and expressions because
He looks
the eyes are more
cartoony,
bigger
so
and
yeah.
not weird looking. So yeah, like I think they clearly did a good job, and it looks a lot better. Hopefully, I'm not expecting like 10 out of 10 out of this film, but it's going to be a fun ride, especially now. So I'm going to watch Sonic.
I'm gonna
It
watch
can
the
take,
Sonic and gotta go fast on everything.
but it's really interesting. The creator of Sonic, Yuji Naka, said that while he's happy with the design, he thought it was weird that they still chose to not connect the eyes because the original Sonic has like basically one eye, and two like I guess pupils that are kind of moving around and stuff. Which I thought like meh, whatever, but like that's not a deal breaker for me. But the one thing that they were also saying was that they want to see what the original version of the film looked like as like even like as a special or something, because while the new movie might be really good, he wants to see like what the previous version. He wants to see the Snyder cut version of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the original version, the
The
original.
OG version, or at least make it
Exactly.
as like a special feature somewhere if you get the Blu-ray.
Ah,
Like
you know,
it's like this
it'd be
extra
great.
weird version.
It'd be great if there was a version of that where they obviously have the original version of the film, but then they get the actor who's voicing Sonic to do like a uh, play, like as if he's watching the film, but then explaining what's happening at this certain time and having like, what is it called? Like a commentary, like a
Yeah,
commentary
like a movie commentary,
extra.
which it's kind of sad that they don't do that anymore because I feel like they're really cool. But anyways, yeah, like it'd be
Yeah,
really cool to
well,
have like a meta thing about it.
it'd be interesting. Well, I mean, like the last one that I remember seeing, it was like for an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. I forget which one it was, but it is literally just Arnie being just laughing and just be like, "Oh yes," and then like something will happen, and then he'll be like, "Oh yeah," and then that happens. Like it's like you're watching the film with him, but he's just describing what's happening on the actual movie. But it'd be cool to see them kind of do that, especially all their hard work with kind of altering the film and making it look a lot better.
Yeah,
But yeah,
obviously there are some shots that don't look 100%, but I'm willing to forgive it.
oh, definitely. But things that we aren't going to forgive, because now we're going back into negativity mode.
It's like
Uh,
we're just going back and forth, everyone.
but yeah, one of the things that recently, had people quite angered, because Disney Plus recently came out. One of the big things, with this was that Disney said that they have 10 million subscribers at the moment. So pretty
Pretty
good
good
job for
launch, I'd
Disney.
say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's like 6.99, or for the basic Disney Plus. That's like not with, um, any of the National Geographic stuff or ESPN. I think it's just the Disney Plus is 6.99. Obviously that'll go up, but that's still a lot of money for Disney to make off just the first month alone. But yeah, one of the big things that people were complaining about, other than not being able to access the actual app properly, was that apparently in The Simpsons, some of the episodes were like ratioed and stretched, but it resulted in a lot of jokes being cut out of the actual show itself. One of them being that came to mind that I saw was they're going through, I think it was like the Duff Brewery, and they're showing like Duff Light, and then Duff, I don't know, some other Duff, and the big joke was that it's all the same. It all came from the same source.
Yeah.
But obviously, because of the aspect ratioing, it just cut out a huge chunk of what you saw on screen. So it's really weird that they did this.
It's really funny. I saw that meme just recently about Disney Plus, and
Yeah.
it literally was the Duff and Doof, and it's all the same thing. It was like Star Wars, Disney, and Marvel, and it's all the same thing. I did find that funny. But yeah, it just kind of sucks that the cropping and bringing these things back. I even heard things of like cutting some couch gags and things like that, or random stuff like that.
Oh,
Like I've heard random stuff about that, and it's like the real question is what source are they using to kind of have this, and like where are they playing it from, and like what's the definitive version of some of these things. I feel like that's the most important thing.
I guess that's the thing, right? Like, how we're moving towards this kind of digital future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be a lot of, uh, you know, incentive for these companies to release box sets for seasons? The box sets of Simpsons, because those are going to be like the unedited version that got released like under Fox. But now that they're under Disney, are they going to do that whole vaulting, Disney vaulting, and like cutting out stuff so that the new version of season 5 of Simpsons isn't going to have this couch gag, or it's not going to have this or that? Like, I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen.
But
Even
you
though
never
I'm probably
know.
not gonna.
That's my biggest worry is like you're changing and re-editing things, and Disney is known to do that. I think obviously the Songs of the South movie that did come out. They not only do they not release that film anymore, and you can't really get it anywhere. But if they re-release things, like I think I've heard stuff where if they re-release Dumbo, or if they've kind of get rid of the crows, because at back of the day that was kind of like a stereotype of people of color at the time. So there's a lot of that stuff that Disney already does, and they just kind of forget that it even existed or happened. So I think that's my main problem. Especially, it's like you can kind of do it with your own studio, and it's kind of whatever. But my whole thing is, what are you doing like with it, or like especially with Fox properties? I think that was my main problem, because they bought it. And I think that's my main problem if they ever edit these things, and hopefully they don't.
Well, I mean, they're already kind of editing stuff, because the Disney Plus edit for Star Wars: A New Hope, with the infamous Han shoots first scene, Greedo is the one who shoots at Han. So they still have that version of it, or I think it got changed. It keeps getting changed, right? Like it keeps getting changed that we're having the original version, and then George Lucas changed it, and then they changed it back.
Yeah,
Now they're changing it back again, to Greedo shooting first, and it's a justifiable meta, right? I don't know. It's weird again that they're doing that. But what can they do? It's like, before you watch a film, it's gonna ask you, hey, do you want to watch the version where Greedo shoots first, or the one where Han shoots first? It's a really weird kind of spot for Disney to put themselves in, and people who are watching it, I guess.
Either way, because Star Wars it's pretty much the most well known example of it, and probably the main example of it. And that's why my main problem is if it's gonna start to do it for every other type of, I guess, movie or franchise, whatever it may be, I think that's my main worry.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of understandable, especially given the direction that Star Wars is going. It's kind of really sanitized and lost a lot of the, I guess, things that made it interesting. Look, the way that they kind of made things interesting is done in a way that's really superficial and very shallow. Like, recently there was like an interview with Ryan Johnson, where in the interview for his new movies Knives Out, like the interviewer said something in regards to how fans had quote unquote like a negative reaction towards the film's cast diversity, to which Johnson said, "Oh well, if someone's responding to the diversity negatively, I fuck him, right?"
Mm.
And the problem isn't that there's a diversity within the cast, having black characters or Asian characters or characters who are aliens and stuff like that. Shit doesn't matter to me because obviously in Star Wars, Star Wars only had like one black character for so long, until Mace Windu came in and fucking stole everyone's hearts. It's like they fucking forgot that Mace Windu is in the prequels.
It's
right?
almost like they forgot about the prequels, like dead set. Like, they kind of forgot that they don't care
Holy
about these
shit.
characters.
I mean, look, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, what was it? What is it? Blade?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, the black superhero. It's like, yeah, for Black Panther. It's like, yeah, Blade was
yeah,
there.
but what about Blade? Yeah, like I remember that. And yeah, it's that kind of lack of self-awareness that it's almost hitting upon hubris, right? Like it was like Sam Smith, the artist, like accepted like I think like a Grammy or something like that, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh, it's great to be like the first gay person to like win a Grammy." And like Elton John is just like, what? It's like, what are you talking about? Maybe it's been a while, but I remember hearing that and being like, yeah, that doesn't sound correct. But it might be like, oh, like openly gay person. I'm not too sure. I don't know when Elton John was
Who knows the
openly gay.
semantics of this whole thing?
But yeah, here's the thing. The problem is, all the characters that Ryan Johnson introduced in his movies were horrible. Rose, horrible. Doesn't do anything other than make the film worse, to the
Well,
point that I'm for the what's the new movie called again?
Knives
Rise of
Out.
Skywalker.
Oh,
She's
no,
probably
yeah.
not gonna have. She's not gonna have a big role in that movie. It's gonna be just like it's like that weird thing that always happens in some shows or some seasons of TV, where they'll introduce like a new character in the previous season, but because of maybe how negative the show, the audience reacted to it, or there's like a new showrunner or something, they either immediately kill off the character or put him in like a small role, right? Like in the
Yeah, they just kind of kill them off, or like they went somewhere now.
yeah, in the prequel movies, Jar Jar Binks, really annoying. Everybody hated him. But then in the second movie, Attack of the Clones, they just have him play a senator, and same thing in episode 3. He's just a senator. He's just there for Naboo. He doesn't. I think technically he causes. He's like the catalyst for everybody to vote for total powers to the Supreme Chancellor, which ended up fucking everyone in the end.
Yeah,
Obviously,
thanks,
because of
Jar
the
Jar
rise of the
Binks.
Empire. Yeah, but you see that's done really subtly and not really in your face. So they, maybe it might mean that like JJ does something interesting with these new quote unquote diverse characters, even though they're really one dimensional. But we'll have to see going forward with Star Wars. But on to more Disney related news. The new Loki TV series will apparently tie into Doctor Strange 2, which kind of changes up maybe what exactly the show will be about.
Because
Given,
because what I heard is that it's in a different timeline, right? So the whole point of like when he at the in Endgame when he gets the cube and kind of disappears, it's split off into his own timeline. Now the whole thing of like the new Doctor Strange movie,
right,
it's the something madness
Multiverse of
one,
Madness.
Universe of Madness. So I'm assuming they're going to be
That's a really
dealing
good
with
point.
they're going to be dealing with different different timelines, different universes, and I think that's that's pretty much the best way to introduce like a new timeline of like where
The
Loki like
concept of
ruled the world with the cosmic cube and he's pretty much everywhere. So it could even just be a split thing of like literally a 10-15 minute thing. He's like, I need to get out of this alternate universe, like what Rick was doing in the new Rick and Morty
mhm.
episode, where there's different alternate universes and different timelines. um
You know,
it'd be something like that, I would say. I'd assume.
yeah, it really didn't occur to me that that was how they connected, but you're completely correct. Like, it makes a lot of sense that that's how they do it. Like, maybe while, Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch are like traveling in a multiverse for whatever reason, they run into that Loki that escaped and went off and made like their own universe, and maybe that kind of ties into them dragging that version of Loki into their universe. So technically, he's like a different version of Loki who's still like an asshole, and then that justifies, oh hey, he's still a dick and he's gonna cause problem for Thor in the future. You know what I mean? It's a good way to maybe them kind of doing stuff. Now it actually makes me more interested in seeing what the new Multiverse of Madness movie will be about. Because if there's two things that I like in media as a kind of, I guess, a MacGuffin or a plot point, it's time travel and multiverses. And those are two things
And
that
that's
usually,
literally exactly the thing.
yeah, well, yeah, usually, because they kind of like do it, they kind of do the whole like flipping a character that you usually know and put him in a new and interesting light due to whatever. Usually DC's the ones who do that, but obviously Marvel has had their hand in it because of all the kind of different Earth versions. Earth 616 is a main universe, so and they have like a ton of different other ones. So it'd be interesting to see that all kind of coming together and making a cohesive film and TV series because I don't know. I was like a bit like meh on the Loki TV show. Like, obviously, it's going to do well because people want to see more Loki, and they're a big fan of Loki and his shenanigans. But I was more like, well, we'll
It's like
see.
yeah, that's the thing. I'll still say we'll see, because I think the Doctor Strange movie has the ability to kind of do anything, and that could actually introduce the X-Men or whatever it may be, or even have like a little teaser of something like that, and then be like, if everyone's like, and then everyone's gonna be like combing through footage and be like, oh my god, they officially did this. And I feel like that's what
Hmm.
they'll kind of do in that movie, and I think that's why that Doctor Strange movie is the most interesting out of pretty much all the new movies, I think. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
my
yeah.
my take on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty succinct. The other thing is they also released a lot of concept art of what the new like suits for a lot of the characters are going to look like. How Bucky looks like, and how Falcon looks like. I think Falcon looks pretty dope. I couldn't kind of like the new visors and stuff. They're introducing U.S. Agent, who is I honestly never heard of this character until the press release for this. Essentially, he's supposed to be Captain America, um, but he works for the U.S. government, which I guess is like
It's like,
different from Captain America. But I guess they need a new Captain America because he's dead or old or whatever. But they also showed Baron Zemo in his kind of traditional mask that he wears, which is like this purple mask. It's really funny because in the tweet from MCU Direct, someone posted one within the edit to the eyes, and it just looks like purple Deadpool,
if you think
which
about
is
it,
yeah, which to be honest, that is kind of what the character's mask would look like usually. So it's pretty accurate. They also were showing off like some other stuff, including the new Hawkeye series, which is I believe it's an animated series.
no,
If
I think it's live action.
it's a live
It's
action,
live action. No, I think if you look online,
huh?
there's a still of Jeremy Renner's there with his daughter, which is obviously going to replace him in the future, and I think there's a dog. And I think like I haven't read any of the new
But is that
Hawkeye stuff, but
I?
apparently
I
that
don't
dog
know
is
if that's the.
important.
Is it? I don't know if that's the same thing because there's the MC Kate Bishop is apparently going to be the new Hawkeye, right? Like unless Kate Bishop is his daughter's name?
Yeah, Kate Bishop's the daughter.
Oh, okay. Wait, so Hawkeye what's Hawkeye's identity? Is it something Bishop?
Wait,
Man,
I am so confused now.
yeah, shows what I know about Hawkeye, and his name's Clint Barton. So how does that make sense? Anyways, the point is
Either way,
they're
there's a
doing.
TV show coming.
I thought it was a cartoon because Jeremy Renner continues to not get anything in the Marvel
So they're
universe.
just like,
Well,
fine, we'll
good
give
on
you a
him.
TV show.
Yeah, where he's like a mentor. He's not even the main character. He's like kind of the side character. But yeah, there's a lot of new stuff that they're also showing, including the some new stuff for the Marvel What If, Agent Carter, or as Captain Carter. I thought they'd call it Captain Britain. That seems to make more sense. They had if T'Challa was Star Lord. That's something.
Yeah, they've got, and also I think they released a still of Captain America being a zombie, so they're definitely going to do the Marvel Zombies thing in the animated form.
Yeah, they have the Winter Soldier going up against the zombie cap, so maybe that might be in the Multiverse of Madness as well. That'd be cool if they did, like, if the next, like, maybe not the next, but like a future Avengers is basically Marvel Zombies, right? That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool, but obviously I don't think they will. Yeah, it's definitely a side thing, but at least
But that would be a good way to kind of bring back characters from, like let's say they're like, oh hey, Robert Downey Jr., you want to come back for a film and play
he's
like a
coming. He's
zombie
coming back
version
for
of
the What
yourself?
If series, but it's not really the same.
Yeah,
So.
but they're just voices. They get paid significantly less for that. I'm talking about having them live action and as a zombie. I think that would be something that would be interesting to see them kind of do if they ever end up doing it.
Of course.
But yeah, that's kind of all the news that's coming out of Marvel at the moment. But I think it's a good time for us to transition into probably the first thing that we both collectively watched, which was the Mandalorian TV show. As of recording, I think the second episode also got released.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was surprised that because when did the first episode get released? Was it?
I think the first episode got released on like a Tuesday or Wednesday over here. But I think what they're doing for some reason, maybe at the start they're just releasing a bunch of the thing at this point, like 2 episodes at least, or like some of the other shows where it's like they release like 3 at a time. I think it's just it's just a launch thing. I think it's for Disney Plus sake.
Okay, yeah.
So I feel like I think that's the
seems
reason,
like.
or else it's just going to be weekly from here on out.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. See more of this show, but I want to hear your particular thoughts of this show so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the first thing with the show is it's kind of what I've wanted out of, I guess, Star Wars for a while. Not only just Disney Star Wars, but Star Wars in general. Something that isn't 100% related to a Jedi or a main story, kind of about ending the universe, whatever it may be, kind of, because the Star Wars world is so big. It's so big. You can do so many stories on it. I think the main problem with a lot of the stuff is makes everything feel small. So firstly, I really like this episode, and I can't wait to see the rest of the episodes. It has that bounty hunter tone to it that everyone talks about, or if you see some episodes of the Clone Wars where they do have the bounty hunters, it has that feeling with it. I think that you also would, it like to know is like this episode's directed by Dave Filoni, who is the head guy of the Clone Wars. So this pretty much feels like a really good Clone Wars into live action type of feeling to it. I do like the new Mandalorian character. As far as I know, I just really enjoy what I've seen of this show so far. It's just got that good feeling, and I feel like I think this show has a lot of history, because I think even before Disney bought off Star Wars, there was talks of George Lucas bringing back Star Wars in bounty hunter form into a TV show, and that was over 10 years ago. Before TV was a big thing. So I'm really happy that this thing exists. And yeah, I very much can't wait to see more.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I enjoyed what I've seen so far. I think my one criticism of the first episode, I've seen both episodes, but my one criticism of the first episode is there's like a scene where he's like learning how to ride like the weird fish lizard horse thing. And like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you have to know how to ride this thing to get to your destination. Um, but I'm like, well, why not just fly your ship closer to where you need to go? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
maybe it's kind of like a semi-origin type of thing, you know?
but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like it didn't take a lot of time for him to tame the creature, um, and so it kind of called into question why even have the scene there at all. Whereas there are other things that happens in the second episode, which I won't spoil, that's far more interesting. That does like a very similar thing. But other than that, like I like the shootout that happens. Um, there's like the interaction with like the Imperials and essentially what is gonna be like the precursor to the first order.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I also do
presumably,
like the fight with the I forgot its name, but the droid. I thought that was really it was kind
yeah,
of
Taika
funny. It had
Waititi.
yeah, it had a good tone where it's like yeah, time to self destruct. Like I thought that was a the
Yeah, it was a
character
good gag.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically not only gag, but it has a good character to it. Like I'm already having more character development with the bounty hunter, the Mandalorian, and this droid than I do with a lot of the main Star Wars characters.
Hmm.
Especially with
Well,
something like
because they actually,
yeah,
it's because they actually have this guy actually has character, you know, and Pedro Pascal does a good job as being this kind of like semi like emotionless character, but then you kind of see bits of it coming out here and there as he kind of goes on and interacts with more people in the universe. And you kind of see he has like the classic equipment. He has like his pistol. He's got like a long rifle. He's got like the hook and the flamethrower. It's kind of classic equipment that you usually see on Mandalorian characters that we've seen in the past, like Jango and Boba Fett. It'd be interesting to see if he does get his hand on a cool like jetpack or whatever. But what did you think about the plot reveal at the end of the first episode?
obviously that's going to be the main, I guess, crux of the show. I think for this first season, or it could be even a small thing. I'm not quite sure, but
From my understanding, and I could be wrong, you know, it's kind of broken up into like a few episodes in terms of like an arc, right? Like
mm,
it's like, oh, this is the arc centered around this particular job, and then the next arc is about like this thing. So it does feel a lot like, especially if you watch the next episode, where technically, my problem with the next episode is like not a lot changes, but it's like a small slice in what's happening in the Mandalorians, and you get to see, oh, like the Star Wars universe kind of expand further, and oh, it's him interacting with this, and how is that working?
mm.
I don't want to spoil too much because I know you haven't seen it yet, but it's really cool to see, like, again, Star Wars and the universe being explored and expanded to. Maybe it's more easy to do in like a 30-40 minute epic, but I don't know. It's a bit of a shame that we don't get to see the same kind of quality expressed in the movies that we are getting in the show, which is honestly kind of banking a lot on the classic Star Wars, but
Yeah,
it's
it has
doing
a
a
lot of
great
those
job.
classic Star Wars elements.
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, maybe it's just sometimes yeah, story I think is very underplayed in the I guess the movies, and I feel like this
Mhm.
one, the Mandalorian already has set up quite a lot of interesting things. And that's why I'm quite interested of how everything plays out because it's already it's already established such a good world and with what it has. I'm just very interested where it kind of moves forward with these characters, and I like the bounty hunter, I guess, universe, and I do want to see more of this, and it's basically what everyone kind of wanted from Lucasfilm for quite a long time. It's even the same thing of I haven't
Hmm.
played it yet, but the Fallen Order, the Star Wars game, and I think this is what everyone wanted from EA when they said they were going to make Star Wars games. So I feel like some of this
Do
stuff,
you mean 1313?
I think it's just called Jedi: The Fallen Order, but it's basically the
What?
same type of thing as like what not by the bounty hunter I mean, but like a good first like a good single player
Okay, sure,
story
sure.
Star Wars game and not Battlefront.
But wasn't there a game that was essentially supposed to be based around a bounty, Star Wars bounty hunter,
Yeah, and that
right?
was 1313. But essentially, this is
1313.
kind of the Fallen Order basically replaced it. But essentially, what I'm saying is people wanted. Um, what is it? People
Yeah,
want.
something that's outside of the
Yeah.
mainstream kind of like, oh, it's a Jedi and the Jedi's and oh, we're gonna focus on the Force. Like, they're gonna have those elements in even this show, but it's gonna be done through the lens of like another character that isn't fully entrenched in the life of a Jedi, and it isn't the universe breaking. He's just freezing people in carbonite and collecting his cool Mandalorian metal for his armor. You know, it's cool shit like that, and yeah, like
Mm.
I think the scope of the show, like again, the budget for the show is 120 million. It's a lot, and I hope that means that the show, given that it only has 8 episodes, hopefully with everything going forward, uh, it will get greenlit for a second season, and maybe that does result in Disney kind of coming up with more ideas and more investment into Star Wars and I guess, the energy that the old, maybe like the writing style or this kind of methodical way of exploring Star Wars, as opposed of this, I don't know, like fast and loose approach that they're doing with the new sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the new trilogy, I would say, whatever they're doing with it, and that's the thing. I'm just very interested in what they do with this universe, or even if they another Star Wars TV show, whatever they're gonna focus on.
Hmm.
But yeah,
But yeah.
I'm really excited to see the rest of it. And obviously episode 2 onwards. But yeah, that's kind of my review. It's basically Mandalorian is exactly what I want from a Star Wars TV show, and I want to see more.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed the show too, and when you get the chance, you need to watch episode 2. And same to you guys out there listening. Um, Speaking of things that are must watch, I recently watched Doctor Sleep. Now, this wasn't a movie that I was really planning on watching, and I think it's a shame because I think it hasn't been doing too well uh, at the box office. I think maybe because a lot of people aren't associating it with the as a sequel to the original film being The Shining.
Which, by
Now,
the way, why are you doing a sequel to The Shining? Who knows?
well, this was an official sequel that was made by Stephen King. So, in very much the same way, it kind of continues on, kind of like a concept from The Shining, not uh, necessarily everything that happens in The Shining, but it's more definitive about what exactly is happening. Now, for people who maybe haven't watched The Shining, it is an old. I hadn't watched the film. I know it's a classic film that gets referenced quite frequently, especially in early Simpsons episodes. Referenced a lot of this movie, and so a lot of this, it was kind of nice for me because essentially, I think 3 hours before I went to watch this movie, I quickly watched The Shining, um, and I
Just a
watched
quick
it.
catch up,
Yeah,
just a quick like
well,
what
I
two and
hadn't
a half
watched it.
hour catch up.
Well, I hadn't watched it before, and I literally I did the same thing with It Chapter 2. I was like, oh man, I haven't seen It Chapter 1. I better quickly watch It Chapter 1 and then watch It Chapter 2. I have no problem with doing stuff like that. It's just like it's just like trying to fit everything in. And the thing is, the one thing about The Shining is that it was kind of easier to kind of go through because I did kind of watch it at I think like 1.25 speed or whatever, just because like again, some people will be like, oh well, you're ruining the pace of the film and how no, a lot of this film, it's a very beautiful film, by the way. Yeah. Kubrick does an excellent job at kind of showcasing the creepiness of this hotel, from like kind of the winding halls, to just like a lot of the color usage. It's very cool. A lot of solid colors. A lot of um, also, I think the big thing about this film, because I did some research about it myself, was it was quite revolutionary for the time because I think they were using like steady cameras or something like that, like a new gyroscopic cameras, and so it allowed for like a lot of the shots that we kind of take for granted now, which is really cool. I didn't know that about the film, uh, because yes, it is a very nicely shot film. Again, this this is kind of turned into a review for The Shining.
It's basically been like, yeah, man, The Shining is a really good film.
Yes,
So
that
so
that
so
is
so
that
essentially,
is
how does Doctor Sleep hold up? Because obviously, it's not going to be as good as The Shining, I'm pretty sure. But how good is it?
um I kind of I don't know. I kind of feel that the film does a good job at kind of continuing from when The Shining left off. Now the main thing is to keep in mind for people, again, just to kind of give people a backdrop of what the Shining is about. Essentially, it's about a uh, a man who's kind of moved into being a hotel. I guess you could say like a caretaker, right? Would that be a good way to kind of describe what the character is? I think
Yeah,
so.
like taking care of
Um,
other people's stuff when they're in the hotel. Yeah.
yeah, it's like yeah, essentially in this hotel, in The Shining, essentially, this up and coming author decides to, stay there for the winter because, during the winter it's kind of harsh, um, and he's going to kind of look after the Overlook Hotel, while the winter goes on because obviously there's a lot of depreciation that happens, and he decides to move in because he thinks, oh sweet, I'm gonna work here, I'm gonna also write my novel, which is what I want to do anyway, and he brings his family along, and it kind of leads to a descent into madness as you kind of question, what is happening in this hotel as he starts to go crazy. But is it because he's crazy himself, or is it because of influences of the house that they're staying at? And this is kind of the interesting thing because in the novelization, I think King had this problem with the film because I think the character of Jack, he the character in the book is essentially uh, a good guy or like a normal person who then gets corrupted by the house into becoming a madman. Whereas the movie kind of sets it out from the beginning that, hey, like, before they even got to the house, Jack is like kind of a questionable character from the get go. Because clearly there's like, they kind of talk about how he potentially like abused Danny, like, dislocated his shoulder, but it's kind of presented as, oh, he was just like, oh, it was kind of an accident kind of thing, you know.
Mm.
But, do we really trust? And the film kind of questions whether or not, he's actually seeing a ghost. But the thing is, every time I think he's talking to a ghost, there's a mirror. So is it just him talking to himself?
Yeah. So it's like one of those mind f's. You don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So like, did you know about that? I didn't. Watching the film, but want to like present a lot of the like there's a huge kind of section dedicated on the Shining Wikipedia, but that's one theory that a lot of people posit. Oh, you don't actually every time he's talking to a ghost or something, um, it's him talking to the mirror. However, like the film presents, there's like a scene where he's locked somewhere, but then he escapes, and the only justifiable reason how that can happen is if there's ghosts involved. So
Right.
that kind of clearly puts the kibosh on. Hey, is he crazy? It's like, no, clearly there is a supernatural element to it. But the other aspect of this film, so I highly recommend The Shining. Go watch it. It's pretty interesting. I like older films anyways in general, so I don't think it's aged pretty well, but I think like it is definitely a movie of its time. So I guess keep that in mind if you don't really like older films. But yeah, I really liked the movie, and the thing is, they changed some aspects of it. In the novel, Jack kind of dies from like a boiler explosion in the house.
That's such a
Uh,
random thing.
yeah, but I think because of like the technology, they didn't do that, and they gave him an alternate death scene, uh, which like I won't spoil, but you can obviously watch it in the movie itself. And the thing is, there's another thing, like there's like a character called Dick Halloran. I think he's like the African American chef who talks to Danny early in the film, and they talk about The Shining. And The Shining is basically it's very vague in the film itself, but it's essentially just like psychological, you know, like having the ability to talk to people in their mind or lift objects up. It's very vague, right? It's
Yeah,
just
it's
like
like it's kind of like a power, but what does it actually do? No one really knows.
yeah, it's kind of a catch-all term. But the thing is, this is the crux of the the movie for Doctor Sleep, which is essentially, we're kind of dealing with like an older version of Danny, the boy from The Shining, whose dad goes crazy, and him trying to deal with the aftermath of all that. Like he takes drugs and he drinks alcohol to kind of numb himself from having to deal with The Shining and the powers that come with it, because he's still kind of haunted by, um, those events that happen to him and those creatures, those, uh, the individuals that you see in the first Shining film, which, by the way, I think the two little girls the little girls that you see in the first Shining film, not in the book. They're not in the book. That's purely something that they did for the film
Really,
itself.
because that's such an
Um,
iconic,
yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of really iconic stuff. Like, even what is it? Jack saying, "Here's Johnny." Like that was done ad lib. That was done like on the fly. That wasn't something on the script or in the book or anything. So there's a lot of stuff that I was reading. Like a lot of it was just like, "Hey, we just did it," and it stuck. But yeah, it's like yeah, and it really kind of confused me as well. But I think like Hey Johnny is I think like Here's Johnny, sorry, is like a reference to I think like a late night TV
Yeah,
show
it's like
or
Jimmy Carson or Johnny Carson. I don't know. I think
Johnny
so.
Carson. Okay, yeah, Johnny Carson. That makes a lot of sense. But like obviously like for me I was like, but his name's Jack. I didn't get it. I didn't get it initially, obviously showing my age. But yeah, no, with Doctor Sleep it's kind of the continuation of that, but then kind of expanding on the idea of what is the Shining, what are these powers, and it kind of introduces like a group of what are essentially like kind of vampires, right? No, they're not really vampires, but they prey on individuals who have the Shining abilities and essentially steal their life force in order to stay immortal. And these characters have like unique powers and stuff like that. And so it's kind of expanding on that, and then Danny kind of getting roped back into this world that he kind of tried to escape in order to save this new younger character, this little girl
Mm.
called Abra, which I kind of found funny because Abra. But essentially, yeah, it's kind of dealing with him, trying to fight his demons, and trying to figure out like how to save her and how to stop this new menace of these kind of shining individuals who are trying to hunt him and her and other people. But at the same time, it does make a really big. It has a lot of really important moments from the original Shining movie itself. So I think like
It's
originally,
because it couldn't really escape it that much. Because it's like if it's a Shining sequel, you kind of have to do
well, they
the Shining
literally,
stuff.
well, yeah, like they reference a lot from the original film to the point that I would recommend watching The Shining. Like even if you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna go into this movie, I watched Shining like a couple of years ago. No, watch the movie again, and then watch this film, and you'll get a lot more out of it. Like there's even kind of subtle things that happen in the movie, uh, like like Dan gets injured, and in the leg, and he has like an axe in his hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of limping around, and it's very it's
The shot looks very similar to when Jack is limping
exactly
around with the axe.
exactly
Yeah.
right. So there's a lot of comparisons. I don't want to spoil much more of the film, but it is recommended reading material or watching material to watch the original Shining movie. Because originally I thought that it wasn't going to have a big connection because King didn't like the original Shining movie. In fact, I think he actually had like
I think he hates
a
it.
TV series made, right, of the same name, which apparently did really good. Didn't watch it, but hey.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of this movie, it can work for either the novel or the uh, book or the movie. So it's not really too important in terms of like canonity. But personally, I would recommend watching the original movie before going into watching Doctor Sleep. I really enjoyed it. I think currently it's sitting at like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience score.
Wow.
Uh, and I think it's a really really good film. Um,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
because when you hear news of like, yeah, there's gonna be a Shining sequel, you're just like, what the hell? Like, but yeah, it sounds like people are relatively pleasantly surprised with this film.
well, the thing is, like I said, this is a novel. This is based off the
Yeah, the
novel
novel.
by
Yeah,
Stephen King. So it's from the. It's not like a creative executive was like, well,
the
we're
Shining
gonna,
was a hit back then.
yeah, let's make a new Shining movie, right? Like, and and because it's kind of like superpower, they're gonna make a Shining cinematic universe. Like no, it's not. That's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like a self-contained story that's well, not self-contained obviously because it needs the original Shining, but it's like a expansion of a concept. Like it's basically one small thing from the first film, because obviously all the um, you know EMP and all those weird powers aren't really talked about in the first film. It's kind of touched upon, that Danny can do some interesting things with his mind, but it's not really elaborated
Yeah, it's like
on.
the first movie's very, very much like
It's
Jack
very
turning into a
sparse.
crazy person, basically.
Yeah, it's very sparse, but it's like as if you're, what a good comparison is in a way, right? Is comparing the, where a lot of films, like there's just like a small thing that gets blown up. Like in a way, I want to compare it to something like Aliens, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Aliens starts off as like a straight horror film,
Yeah,
but then it becomes like an action film in the in Aliens, right? The Alien Two. While it's not the same in the sense that Aliens Two can is still like quote unquote scary for its time, but the tone of the show is sorry, tone of the movie is very different. It's more of an action horror or action thriller or whatever the typical
it's
name
not
is.
hard. It's not normal horror. It's like got horror
Yeah,
elements in it. Just it's mix of different genre.
yeah, and I think it's the same for Doctor Sleep as well.
Mm.
But yeah, I really enjoyed the film. Maybe we'll have a more in-depth and spoiler review from it once you've watched it, Don, because I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it sounds like it went, as you mentioned before, it kind of flew under my radar, and I think a lot of
I think it's
people's.
flown under a lot of people's radar.
Cause you're just like, oh, what the hell is this film? Whatever, and
Yeah, I mean, look
especially since
again.
it's released during around Halloween time, you know.
Yeah, like look again. I think like the problem with it is that it kind of came and like if this movie was kind of presented as like the Shining sequel, I think it would have done a lot better, right? If it just kind of presented it as, the Shining, dash Doctor Sleep, and it was like, or the Shining to Doctor Sleep. That obviously I don't like as much, but just
Yeah, yeah, I know
something
what you mean.
something to kind of reference the original film. I think it would have done a lot better. But I think because of the way that it was marketed, they didn't get to do it. Like, and it also has Ewan McGregor as Danny. So what more can you want?
Yeah, like we need. I like seeing him in everything. You know, he's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mr.
Exactly.
Obi-Wan. But yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely give it a check because it sounds pretty good. But yeah, that will be us for this week. I remember you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and our YouTube channel. We go live and stream on our channel, Marketing Movies. So until next time, maybe Henry Cavill is going to be in a horror film. Who knows? But until then, see you guys.
Gotcha.